Hello everyone, welcome back to another satisfying episode of ProRevenge, the place where justice is served, karma strikes back, and we all get to enjoy hearing how people get exactly what they deserve. Get comfortable, because today I've prepared 3 incredible revenge stories just for you. This first story's titled My Cousin Forged My Dad's Will. Families don't fall apart, they rot quietly. It started with a drawer, my father's desk, antique oak, the kind with brass handles and a finish worn smooth from decades of use. I'd grown up watching him sit behind it, paying bills, reading newspapers, drafting letters. He kept his will in the top right drawer. We all knew that. When he passed, I expected mourning. What I got was a locksmith. If you enjoy the content, subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're from. My older cousin Greg, technically second cousin, but always around, always helping, always convenient, showed up to the house before the coroner even left. He had a key to the front door. Claimed Dad had given it to him just in case. Claimed he was here to help me sort things. But then he started making phone calls. Fast ones. Lawyers, bankers, the family accountant. He talked like he had authority, like he expected to be in charge. The drawer was locked. Same small brass key it always had. But when I went to open it, it was gone. Oh, that? Greg said. We had to get it open. For legal stuff. You understand. I didn't. Because when I found the drawer open, the papers inside were new. Clean. Too clean. Freshly printed. No yellowing. No wear. A new will, dated 3 weeks before my father's death, typed and signed. It left Greg everything. The house, the account, the car, even the old typewriter Dad hadn't touched in a decade. My share? Sentimental items, to be discussed separately. I didn't make a scene, didn't raise my voice, but something felt wrong off. Dad wasn't the kind to change his mind, especially not to leave his only son with a handshake and a box of keepsakes. That night, I drove to the notary office listed on the document, and what I found out there was the first crack in Greg's carefully constructed lie. The notary's office was a squat brick building wedged between a payday loan place and a vape shop. It didn't inspire confidence. Inside, the walls were lined with file cabinets and a plastic ficus drooped in the corner like it had given up trying to be alive. I asked to see the record of my father's will. The receptionist pulled it up, dated, stamped, filed. All clean, except one thing, the signature. It wasn't signed in person. According to the log, Dad had submitted it remotely, scanned and emailed, with a digital acknowledgement, which was strange. My father didn't use email. He didn't even own a smartphone. I had once watched him struggle for 20 minutes to reset a digital alarm clock. Could I get a copy? I asked. The receptionist hesitated. You'll need to request it through your attorney. I smiled. Already did. Just following up. Back in my car, I opened the photo I had secretly snapped of the document. I zoomed in on the signature. Too smooth, too uniform, no hesitation strokes. It looked replicated. That night, I dug through a shoebox of my dad's old mail. Letters, tax forms, greeting cards. I found 6 authentic signatures. I layered them in a photo editing program. The forensics were crude, but the truth stood out like a flare. Greg had copied my dad's signature from an old document and pasted it onto a new one. Poorly. The next day, I went to see Ruth. Ruth had worked with my father for 30 years. She handled his bookkeeping and legal filings, long after she retired. She was sharp, private, and absolutely done with everyone's bullshit. I showed her the will, watched her face tighten. He never mentioned changing it, she said. And believe me, he would've, especially to something like this. We compared the new document with an old one she still had in her records, dated 2 years earlier. That one left everything to me. The difference? Ink. You get this tested, Ruth said, tapping the fresh document. You'll find it wasn't signed 3 weeks ago. It's probably not even written with the same pen. That was all I needed. Because if Greg wanted to play with signatures and scans, he should have remembered. Some of us play with fire better than others. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and dust. Greg sat across the table from me, legs crossed, smug as a senator. He wore a watch too expensive for his salary and a smile too wide for someone who had just stolen a house. You sure you want to go through with this? He asked, like I was about to embarrass myself. You're only going to delay things. I didn't answer, just nodded to Mr. Callahan, the estate attorney. He looked older than the desk he sat behind but had the mind of a steel trap. We began the reading. Greg's version of the will was introduced first. Neat, precise, scanned and printed. Greg had brought his own copy, smugly annotated with sticky tabs like he expected to walk out with keys and a title. Then I handed Callahan the envelope. Inside, a certified copy of the original will, with notarized chain of custody, 2 ink signature verifications, and an affidavit from Ruth stating the contents had remained unchanged since filing. And then, the coup de grace, a forensics report on the new will. Greg's will had been printed on paper manufactured after my father's death. The ink was less than 2 weeks old. The signature, as confirmed by a handwriting analyst, had been lifted from a lease document my father signed 3 years ago, then digitally altered. Callahan read the report aloud. Greg's face didn't change at first. Then his ears went red. Then his hand twitched. Then the smile died. "This is absurd," he said. Callahan didn't blink. "This is forgery. And you submitted this to a financial institution for inheritance transfer. That's a federal crime." I watched Greg's jaw flex. "Unless you'd like to press your case in court," Callahan continued, "I recommend you step back and count yourself lucky we're not pursuing criminal charges." Silence. Then, finally, Greg stood and walked out. No words, no apology, just the sound of his shoes echoing down a corridor longer than it looked. Later that week, I stood alone in my father's study. The desk was just as he'd left it. The drawer now open, empty except for a small note in his handwriting. "Trust who earns the key, not who wants it." I framed it. Because revenge doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes, it just waits in a drawer, until the wrong person tries to take it. This next story is titled "Moldy Landlord Gets Schooled by Fine Print." I moved into the apartment thinking it would be temporary. 1 year, maybe 2. It was close to work, the rent was manageable, and the place, though small, had charm. Original hardwood floors, old radiator heaters, a view of the city skyline if you craned your neck just right. The landlord, Carl, was fine. At first, older guy, faded polo shirts and always a Bluetooth earpiece in, like he was permanently on hold. He handed me the lease like it was a favor, smiled too hard, said, "We're flexible around here, as long as rent's on time." I didn't know then that flexible meant he was, with rules, maintenance, and ethics. The issue started within the first month. The radiator hissed non-stop. The toilet rocked like it was bolted to a trampoline. And then there was the mold. A dark, fuzzy bloom that started in the back corner of the closet and crept across the wall like spilled ink. I reported it. Carl sent a handyman. The guy showed up with a paint roller and a can of Kills. "Seals it right up," he said, whistling. It didn't. By month 3, I developed a cough that wouldn't quit. My clothes smelled like mildew. When I pulled the carpet back, I found black mold webbing through the subfloor. I documented everything. Photos, timestamped videos, emails that went unanswered. Carl didn't care. "You can leave if you don't like it," he said. "You're not locked in. Just give up your deposit." I couldn't afford to move again. Not yet. And that's when I started reading the lease. Not casually, closely. And in that fine print, buried beneath the boilerplate language and typo-riddled clauses, I found my way out. Better yet, I found my way in. Carl had no idea what he was up against. Most tenants don't read the lease. They skim the bolded stuff: rent amount, due date, security deposit. But I read every word, twice. And what I found was gold. Clause 14b, under habitability and repair, landlord is responsible for ensuring all rented premises are free of health hazards, including but not limited to toxic mold, pest infestation, and structural instability. Clause 22f. Should the landlord fail to address such issues within 30 days of written notice, tenant is entitled to remediation through third-party services with subsequent deduction from rental payments. I highlighted every sentence, built a spreadsheet of dates, communications, and expenses. And then I got to work. I hired an independent mold remediation specialist. Cost me $680. I logged every cent. Next, I filed a complaint with the Department of Health. They sent an inspector within the week. He spent 15 minutes in my closet, took 2 swabs, and emerged shaking his head. "This is Category C contamination," he said. "If he doesn't fix this, we shut the place down." I smiled. Good to know. The report was emailed to Carl and CC'd to the Housing Authority. He responded exactly as I expected, with a hissy fit over text, accusing me of violating the lease by bringing in strangers. So I sent him a PDF of Clause 22f. The rent was due a few days later. I deducted the remediation cost, attached all receipts, and wrote PER lease terms, Clause 22f on the memo line of my check. Carl blew up, threatened eviction. But here's the thing, I'd already filed a formal complaint. I'd already paid my portion, and I'd already contacted a tenants' rights attorney, who, after laughing for a solid minute, agreed to send Carl a friendly cease and desist letter. The letter ended with a line I'll never forget. "Further harassment of our client will result in legal action, financial penalties, and public exposure of this unit's uninhabitable conditions." Carl went quiet after that. But I wasn't done, because the lease had one more clause he didn't expect I'd read. A clause about early termination, and the conditions for enforcing it? He'd already met them all. Clause 31d, termination conditions. Tenant may break lease without penalty if landlord fails to provide habitable conditions after written notice and documented inspection by a recognized municipal agency. I had all of it. Photos, mold reports, health department citations, proof I'd notified him in writing, proof he didn't act. Carl had built the trap, I just walked him into it. I sent my notice on the 1st of the month. Printed, signed, certified mail. 1 copy to Carl, 1 to the housing board. 30 days. And I'd be free. Legally. Cleanly. No broken lease on my record. Full refund of my deposit required under statute. But here's where it gets good. In his rage, Carl had texted me threats. He said I was blacklisted, said he'd make sure no one rented to me again, that I'd never get your damn deposit, said he'd sue me for defamation if I talked about the mold. All of it? In writing. So I printed the texts, attached them to a complaint I sent to the city's landlord licensing board. Turns out, they don't love it when license holders threaten tenants or ignore health violations. Carl's license? Suspended pending review. 3 other tenants in the building moved out within a month. 2 filed their own complaints. By the end of the quarter, Carl had racked up more fines than his rental income could cover. Rumor was, he started trying to sell the building. I moved into a new place, clean, dry, freshly renovated, with the full deposit from Carl's apartment returned, plus a surprise check for $350. Overpayment correction, it said. I framed the envelope, because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's legal. Sometimes, it's a paragraph on page 7. Sometimes, it's knowing that the man who threatened you with fines is now begging the city for a second chance. And sometimes, it's just watching mold crawl back where it came from quietly, behind someone else's walls. This last story is titled Art Thief Artist Loses Everything After One Silent Sketch. Some betrayals don't happen all at once. They unfold like a painting layer by layer, until one day you step back and realize the thing you trusted is something else entirely. I met Eric at an art residency in Oregon. We were both mid-30s, freelance illustrators, burned out from contract work and algorithm chasing. He had this dry wit, a talent for light and shadow, and an apartment full of half-finished oil paintings. We clicked instantly. He said I was clean with lines. I said his colors were deliberately chaotic. We meant both as compliments. After the residency, we stayed close, traded client referrals, reviewed each other's work, shared resources. When I moved to Seattle, he helped me find a studio sublet. When he needed a printer hookup, I introduced him to mine. Then came the pitch. I've got a project, he said one night over drinks. Children's book. Publisher loves the concept, but I'm swamped. Could you sketch a few panels? Just concept art. I'll credit you. I said sure. No contract. No money, just lines for a friend. I sent him 5 pages, character studies, environment sketches, a color script. He said they were perfect. Then I heard nothing for weeks, until I saw the book, listed on the publisher's website, fully illustrated, final versions of my sketches, nearly line for line. No credit, no mention, just art by Eric Callan. At first, I thought, no, it can't be mine, must be a coincidence. But then I recognized a small detail, a patch of moss shaped like a dragon's eye, a signature motif I'd drawn since college. It was mine. He had stolen my work, and that's when I decided, if Eric liked taking credit for other people's work, he was about to find out what it's like to have a portfolio fall apart in front of an audience. I didn't call him, didn't text, didn't confront him at all. That's what he'd expect, some teary how could you confrontation he could deflect with vague apologies and half-baked excuses. No! I'd learned long ago, when someone stabs you in the back, you don't spin around. You walk forward and let them wonder how deep the knife went. So I got methodical. First, I documented everything. My original sketches, with timestamps and metadata. Screenshots of the email he'd sent asking for help. The files I'd sent in response. All with dates, signatures, and even a few layers left intact from my digital workspace. Then I bought a ticket to an industry expo Eric was scheduled to attend, a panelist, no less, for a talk on creative collaboration and credit. Poetic, right? But I wasn't going there to yell. I was going there to submit to the open gallery. The expo had a showcase wall. Artists could display original concepts alongside development notes, meant to inspire transparency and process sharing. I submitted mine anonymously, just sketches and step-by-step panels from the exact project Eric had stolen. The same environments, the same dragon, the same mossy rock with the eye-shaped shadow. But at the bottom of each display, I added one thing, a digital signature watermark, date-stamped, and a small caption. Original concept art submitted by contributor for collaborative project, subsequently published without credit. No names, no accusations, just the truth, laid out for anyone to piece together. I placed it near the entrance to the panel room where Eric would be speaking, and then I waited. I stood in the back of the room as Eric took the stage. He looked comfortable, black button-up, neatly trimmed beard, that performative humility he wore like cologne. He started the panel with his usual shtick. Collaboration is about trust, he said, giving credit where it's due. We rise together, or not at all. I nearly laughed, but I didn't need to speak, because outside that very room, a quiet storm was building. Attendees were trickling past the gallery wall, artists, publishers, students. Some took photos, some pointed, some frowned. The sketches were too close, the resemblance undeniable. And then someone from his own publisher's booth walked over, looked long and hard, and didn't come back. When Eric exited the panel 30 minutes later, the gallery was swarmed. A couple of his fans were already whispering, showing screenshots on their phones. He walked up to the wall, still smiling, and then he saw it. His whole expression changed, like someone had wiped the paint off his face. He stared at the sketches, at the caption, at the signature. He looked around, scanning the crowd. I didn't move, but he knew. I watched it happen the moment a man realizes his scaffolding is made of lies. That his portfolio, the one getting him panels and praise, has a hairline fracture running through its foundation. And that fracture had just been put on display. That night, I sent an anonymous email to the publisher. Attached were the original files, full documentation, metadata, emails. A week later, the book listing was pulled. The artist credit changed from Eric Callan to Art by Anonymous Contributor. Royalty disputes were under internal review. His next gig? Quietly cancelled. Eric hasn't reached out. And he never will. Because he knows. And that's enough. Sometimes, revenge doesn't scream. It sketches. It signs. It frames the truth in a gallery and lets the world see what the thief refused to admit. And when the paint peels back, everyone remembers who drew the first line.